Welcome on a Monday night to Generation Movie. My name is J.W. Colwell. I am joined, as always, by my cohort in crime, my yin to my yang, Rich Drees.
I don't want to be anything near your yang, okay?
I didn't say you were near my yang. I just said you were the yin to my yang.
Yin to your yang.
We're getting a little personal. So, welcome to Generation Movie on a Monday night. We got a movie to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about Schindler's List tonight, but first we're going to talk about some news stories that are breaking as we talk, as we hang out. So first question for you, Rich, is how do you feel about Jeff Bezos, billionaire, owning James Bond?
Well, he kind of did already. Well, at least owned the distribution to it when he bought MGM. So last Thursday's announcement did kind of come as a little bit of a shock that the Eon Productions, basically Michael Wilson and Barbara Broccoli, the son and daughter of Cubby Broccoli, who was the one who acquired the James Bond film franchise rights back in 1961, and basically the family has held those rights and controlled that franchise by themselves all of this time, which is an amazing feat whatsoever for 25 movies now. So it wasn't that much of a surprise. I mean, it was a little bit of a surprise that they were stepping back entirely. I figured we were just in due for an announcement of something happening. And I just figured they were expecting a Bond. We're going ahead with 26, and here are the writers. And
we were expecting a Bond. When the announcement that we were expecting was a Bond. Who the new Bond was going to be.
You were hoping. You've been hoping for over a year because you said 2024 was going to be the year we get the Bond announcement.
You know what? But now it all makes sense, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
The idea that these two people that have been caretakers to the character, that not only have been quality control, not only have been, just a general caretaker to one of the most famed franchises in history. If they're both stepping away, and don't get me wrong, I'm not. I would not like Amazon to be running it. But I would have liked them to pick a caretaker, maybe within the family, maybe within the Broccoli family or something. Somebody that had a connection, that understood how careful, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm concerned about the quality control, and I'm concerned about the caretaking of the character. Well, I'm also concerned about the billionaires own everything now.
I understand, and I'm always concerned and hoping that whoever runs whatever franchise is going to do a good job. I don't want to fall into the trap of thinking or saying, well, this other franchise being run by other people, by this other company, doesn't do a good job. So obviously the Bond franchise isn't going to be shepherded well either. It's a stupid false equivalence as far as I'm concerned.
Fair, that's fair. And
remember, Amazon has given us a lot of good stuff. I know I'm probably a little more up on like Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power than most people, but everybody will tell you that everybody will get together and say, yes, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is a wonderful show. There's really no bad words to be said about stuff like The Man in the High Tower. And there, a dozen other shows, I'm sure that, because I just don't watch a lot of what Amazon has put out, but I know a lot of it has been very critically acclaimed. I'm not necessarily.
I'll give you an example.
Knee-jerk reaction upset about this.
No, it explains everything. It explains why it's taken so long. I'll give you an example that scares me.
Do this. And just to say that Bond only belongs on the big screen, I think does a disservice to the character and the types of stories you can tell with him. I think you could do like a big long Bond adventure, because let's face it, movie Bond is very episodic. You know, he goes here, he goes here, he goes here, action sequence, action sequence, action sequence, finale, he fucks a girl. And you could kind of do that in a 7 or a 10 episode series. You know, you could do
immediate. I feel like that's an immediate deal breaker. I feel if they go, we're going to turn it into a show, I feel you'll get enough people going, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like we're coming off a high point, right?
That's because they're afraid of change.
Yes,
they don't like change.
Yes, they don't like change.
And they don't want to leave their minds open to the possibilities that this could be good, this could be interesting, it could be different. How many people thought Star Wars on TV was a bad idea? And granted, some of it has not been great, but we are what, 2 months away, month and a half away from
Andor season 2.
Some people
the trailer just dropped.
Turning Daredevil into a TV show was a bad idea. And literally 12 minutes ago, the social embargo lifted on Daredevil Born Again. And I've been kind of like strolling through some of the first critic reactions. Are
you one of the first critics?
No. I get my access to it later in the week. But social embargoes lifted. I can mention that, I guess. I don't know. But these people, all of it sounds great. It pulls no punches. The devil is back. Powerful reintroduction to Marvel's most complex and scourged character. So, it's always execution dependent, is what I always come down to say. So
I'll give you something that made me nervous.
The execution is going to be before I get my panic.
But I'll give you something that made me nervous. So Friday morning, on Thursday, after they announced it, right? Jeff Bezos goes on X and says, "Who'd you pick as Bond?" I look at that and I go, "Oh, fuck." Because
I think that's just him trying to drum up some excitement and some enthusiasm. I don't think that's sure? That's not legally binding. People can't say,
but I'm just saying to you,
said Henry Cavill, now he's legally bound to cast Henry Cavill.
I'm just saying to you that is not
like Cavill is wanted at this point. And he's
but
too
what
old.
I'm saying to you is that is a different level of quality control than you and I are used to. Correct? You would agree?
He's just out there trying to, hey, what do you guys think, huh? Just drumming up the excitement.
Okay.
I honestly, I didn't give a shit. I couldn't.
I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things where, we've had these caretakers, and some people are good caretakers, like Kevin Feige, and some people are bad caretakers. And this feels like Zazzle.
I got the Zazzle.
I got the Snyders.
Jerry Lewis.
I got the fucking Snyders. I worry about this particular character. And I feel like it's one of those characters that it can be very hit or miss, is very dependent on getting the casting right. And now we have the people that were very diligent and part of that caretaking walking away. It makes me nervous. It just makes me nervous. It also makes me worry about where will Bondathon be in 2027. That's what I'm nervous about, Rich.
At the same time, maybe some new creative blood is required. Who knows? The Bond as a literary character survived the passing of Ian Fleming. We got 12, 15 novels from Raymond Benson, another half a dozen, John Gardner, another half a dozen from Raymond Benson. A couple of others from some different authors. Some of them chose to keep it in the modern day. Some of them chose to keep it back in the 60s. There's 3 Miss Moneypenny books out there. There's books about other 00 agents. There's a comic that they did for Felix Leiter.
Okay. You're easier on this. You're feeling better about this than I am. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Joe.
Heart attack. Okay, I don't know.
Good evening, friends. Good evening, Ken McKernan.
Hey, good evening, Ken.
Didn't John Wick do a TV series? No, it was just a show. It was a show. No, it was in the John Wick world.
Well, yeah,
and it was crappy. Like, it was bad.
I didn't watch it actually, but Ballerina coming up also looks pretty good, and that's a spinoff. So
fair. Good point. And excellent point, TJ. Although I would say to you, if you like Rebels, you should really check out Andor season 1. Because Andor's pretty good.
I will admit, the first season of Rebels, I was kind of like, I'm not sure I'm feeling this or not. But I think with season 2, it really kicked off, and I really enjoyed it as much as I did like a lot of the latter seasons of the Clone Wars.
So another thing that is happening today as we speak. Well, first off, I want to say rest in peace to George Armitage. Good director. Died at 83. Didn't make a lot of hits, but he made a couple that were movies that I really enjoy that are unsung, fun movies. Grosse Point Blank is a great fucking movie.
Oh my god!
And Miami Blues is a fantastic movie.
That's one I have not seen, and I am going to correct that this week.
I got myself. It's grimy Alec Baldwin. It's really fun. He's it's grimy Alec Baldwin. You know, there's the Alec Baldwin movies where he's super clean, or shows like 30 Rock where he's clean. And then there's grimy, dirty Alec Baldwin. I don't mean it in a bad way. I just mean to delineate two different forms of Alec Baldwin movies. But it's Alec Baldwin, Fred Ward, and Jennifer Jason Leigh, who is fantastic. It's just a really underrated, fun 90s era Pulp Fiction-esque kind of getaway-esque kind of fun movie. And it has a really good soundtrack. And as did Grosse Point Blank. So rest in peace, George Armitage. Thank you for making some fun movies and being a trooper. And another thing that came out that we need to talk about. So they made some announcements over at DC, run by the incredible James Gunn. And
right 3 weeks after I post that the state of the DC cinematic universe piece that I worked hours and hours on trying to line up all the information that we had.
Yeah, Batman
just goes
fuck it. 2 Batman movies, a possible Teen Titans movie.
Most of it still stands of what I wrote. There's some new things that revealed, but
2 Batman movies.
do a quick revisit of it later on in the week.
The 2 Batman movies wasn't bad. Everybody kind of had that in mind. We might be getting them. We might be getting Pattinson's Batman quicker than originally intended or thought. Penguin season 2.
Knew that was
Penguin season 2 definitely. And then just basic, it's an update of the slate. So one of the jokes they made is that they both felt 100 years older since taking over DC, and they're joking about that a little bit. But they were, Superman, of course, is the big one still coming. Season 2 of Peacemaker heading summer 2026, or summer 2025 for Peacemaker. Superman Girl, Woman of Tomorrow, looking to be on track for summer of 2026, and Lanterns, which is somewhere January, February 2026. So, basically that they're the Batman, the Bold and the Brave and the Bold is what they're talking about. They're talking about a Waller movie, an Authority movie, and a Booster Gold movie. All
Yeah,
apparently
the Booster
some
Gold
of which
TV series.
some of which will appear on Max, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Clayface is going to get his own movie.
Yeah, Waller and Booster Gold are series, not films. I think it's interesting though that there's a quote here in the Hollywood Reporter about how they talked about they do have a kind of a rough outline of where they're going, but they're not afraid to pivot.
Right, because they were talking about the scripts. They were talking about the scripts. Like they said, it's almost impossible making a movie with a script that you're writing on the run. It's hard enough making a good movie with a good script. And then that's why they, for example, they greenlit Clayface because they felt Mike Flanagan's script was better than what anybody envisioned, and that they had actually had no plans of making a Clayface movie until Flanagan pitched it to them. So that they're willing to change on the fly is the interesting point here, which is good. Changing on the fly is good for things that are trying to make bank.
Yeah, I think they need that flexibility, and it makes the any kind of changes come from more of a creative need than a reflexive reaction to what you perceive certain loud sectors of fandom to be complaining about.
Right,
Loud,
and they can't afford to have any moment like background. They can't. It's just something where I think that's the key for them, right? The key for them is we don't want a Batgirl situation. We don't want anything to happen.
Like Man of Steel all the way through Blue Beetle. There was a lot of reaction, a lot of overthinking in the corporate offices of the highest levels at Warner Brothers. And there was a couple rotating executives in there too, and constant reshufflings where new people would come in and say, okay, we need to do this now. We maybe should focus this on more, and not just, the Snyderverse versus blah, blah, blah. But, even beyond that, look how long and how many different creative people wrote, cycled through The Flash. Took forever.
Well, The Flash is one of them. Like the Shazam hitting of being a minor hit and then coming back really quickly with a second Shazam movie as Zachary Levi was having a nervous breakdown certainly wasn't the best, best for business. And not being able to use Superman, and then also being able to use Superman, and then like
that whole mission.
Yeah, the whole Michigan about like the unwritten rules of you can have all of our DC characters except for Batman and Superman. And for a lot of people, and I say this with both of us having an abundance of comic book reading in our history, not everything is Batman and Superman. So it's sometimes good to get other minor characters out there so we can have different views on things. But
I liked the Blue Beetle movie. Jaime Reyes is a legacy. Well, my prefer, the Blue Beetle I grew up with, Ted Kord, the Ted Kord version, was a legacy character anyways. Jaime Reyes is this second generation legacy. And I'm excited that
Blue Beetle,
the animated film is
Blue
going
Beetle
to
had
continue.
a good, it's getting an animated show, which is cool with the same cast.
Which kind of grandfathers that movie into what's happening now, which is neat.
Yeah, it's been interesting watching Gunn pick and choose what he thinks worked or didn't work. You know what I mean? And also there is some quietly things in the background where you can pick up on it if you're paying really close attention. Where Gunn is, Gunn has definitely talked about liking the CW stuff. You know what I mean? And so one of the things that came up is like not opposed to having, the kid from The Flash play the Flash, not opposed to having, Green Arrow, and already established Green Arrow play Green Arrow. That might be different versions of them, but the idea that he doesn't hate the CW stuff, which for the most part, for most of our adult lives, has been the most consistent part of DC. You know what I mean?
I would say up through their Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover. I think afterwards they were kind of floundering for a while and didn't quite get back on their feet.
They couldn't use anybody. They were like, every time they went, they were like, we want this big thing that we think will work. Yeah, you can't use that character. Sorry. We have big plans for them in Zack Snyder's universe. Like, fuck. But yeah, I mean,
but now all of that is under one umbrella, though. That kind of.
Yeah, but but it's at least good to know that Safran and Gunn, they're not pivoting out of necessity. They're pivoting out of, holy shit, the script was really good. It knocked their dick in the dirt. You know what I mean? Like, cool. You know. Okay. Last thing before we start tonight. Screen Actors Guild Award was happening last night. I'd be remiss not to ask you how you felt. Did not what was that?
I did not win anything.
You did not win. No. I was sorry to hear that. No. I think
so
the two things that everybody was talking
about, a movie or two maybe, so I can try.
Two things everybody was talking about from last night. There's a great moment with Harrison Ford, and one of his co-stars from Shrinking. She got one of the calls to do the actor bit. I'm an actor, and Ford was in the middle of eating his dinner, and it was just this amazing repartee between two people who appear to genuinely like each other. And Harrison Ford genuinely liking anybody at this point in life is a good thing. Like, because I feel like he hates a lot of people. And so, but it was really nice. And then the other thing that everybody's talking about, and I'm going to take an opposite approach on this one. Timothée Chalamet said, "I want to be one of the greats" last night.
He can be. I think he's well on his way.
He is well on his way. He brought up Brando. He brought up, Viola Davis. He brought up very distinct personalities. And I think the interesting thing is, normally JW would say that didn't seem humble and it could hurt him. But in reality, if you're looking at the actors that are out there right now, he is one of the young guns. He is one of the people that have played, that first off, he can play characters across the spectrum. He drives box office. He has star appeal, right? And so when he says it, some people gasp and clutch their pearls. But last night I was thinking to myself, sure, we haven't had somebody that's gone for the gusto in a long time. And I thought
see
it was
nothing wrong with somebody saying, "I want to be a great person. I want to be great in my field." Yeah, go for it. Not just, "Hey, I'm getting by. I'm making a good living. I'm cool with that."
I've been Willy Wonka. I'm cool. I feel great.
And he has already
potential.
shown that he can do that. It'd be something else if, like, I don't know. I don't want to name like a shitty actor or actress. So like, but yeah, plug in your least favorite actor or actress like Gina Carano here and go, well, they would be ridiculous.
Well, and then you did it anyway. No, I think that what's interesting is 9 times out of 10, given a big speech at these award shows, for me, I feel like it's very much walking on eggshells, and you should be humble. But I felt a wholesomeness from the kid last night that he legit wants to be a great. And we don't have enough of that anymore. We don't have enough people going, I want to be the best. Right? I want to be the very best at this job. And I felt instead of finding it non-humble, I found it incredibly like ingratiating. Like I found him like, I want to root for this kid. I hope he achieves his dreams. Mentioning Brando that's a tall order. Anywhere you go, mentioning Brando, and just kind of throwing it out there. But I like that he mentioned Viola Davis, because that's an unsung all-time great. You know what I mean? And then the other big thing in the news of the night was that Conclave won the ensemble award, which is predicted the last 4 Academy Award winners.
Yeah, for Best Picture. So that's
Picture.
really interesting.
It's a fucking nightmare. If you have a pool, this year is a nightmare. If you're in a pool, an Oscar pool, or betting or doing anything on, this year is like picking up a hand grenade without a pin in it. Just holding it for like 3 hours and hoping it doesn't go off in your hands. I mean, things got solidified, certainly. Saldana, Culkin, and more, right? Saldana for a completely terrible movie, but she's great in it. Kieran Culkin for an incredibly well done movie. I saw A Real Pain like a month ago, and I called my cousin immediately the morning I watched it and said, "I'm thinking of you today. I'm just." Because that movie had me all in the feels, and he's fantastic in it. And then Demi Moore, with coming out of nowhere with a horror film, a horror role that's, I know it's, everybody's like it's satire and all, but it's a horror movie. She's and I just feel really great for her because I do feel like she kind of got pushed to the side in the 90s. You know what I mean? Like, kind of pushed out of the way. But the Conclave win was mind-boggling because I don't know who you pick when we get there on March 3rd. I don't know. It might be the most wide-open Oscar race in the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, where you consistently don't know what's going to win in most of the categories. Like, it's crazy. I was looking at it last night going, this is nuts. Conclave, like, Ray Fiennes was up there going like, oh, we didn't prepare anything. We weren't expecting to win. So, but I thought that was interesting. I thought they did a really cool thing. One of the things that the gigs they did last night was having people show people their first performances, where they started, like Coppertone commercial for Jodie Foster and all kinds of wacky stuff. And I thought it was a good show. Kristen Bell did a really good job hosting.
Oh yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing, but the pieces I caught with her looked, she was just
very funny.
She's a great sparkling wit. I mean, just think back to when she was on Craig Ferguson's talk show all the time.
Yes,
and she was just really fast, really funny.
She was very good last night, and yeah, and they did a really good job with the overarching bit was, since you didn't see it, I'll explain it. The overarching bit was, who is your best co-star of all time? Because she's been in all these shows, and so all the guys that are shows or movies. Right, so they basically had everybody at various points trying to get her to say that they were the best. Like Ted Danson was trying to get it, the other guy from The Good Place, and then Jason Segel showed up, right? And like everybody was like trying, and then Adrian Brody showed up. Not Adrian Brody. Brody. What's the first? The kid who was in the movie with her about the rabbi. Oh my God! I can't believe I just went up on this. Adam Brody. I have Adrian Brody in the head. So all of those things, they were all showing up doing different things, and then they showed a bunch of pictures of her getting kissed by various co-stars, and Brody said, my hands on the face are what made me your best co-star. And then she cut to a PowerPoint, where it was her, like, with all the different co-stars, and they're all holding her face. She's like, perhaps it's my move. It's my go-to move. And it was a good bit. It was a quality bit that you could build a show around. Okay. So I'm going to be honest with everybody tonight. Rich and I watched Schindler's List, and I got to tell you, it is as devastating in a rewatch.
Yeah.
this is not our tone. Rich brought it up earlier. This is not the normal tone with which we do things. This movie
Mhm.
is harrowing. It is hard. It is hard to watch. It is, you watch like because you're watching it second, third, fourth time, and you're trying to figure out different things or what are the themes. What's the run through? Like how like
But it's an amazing masterpiece of a film, and I wouldn't change a frame of it to make me
oh yeah,
more
no,
comfortable.
and it's yeah to make us more comfortable. But I would say that both you and I had the exact same thing. It's like I don't know if I can handle this movie this week. I don't know if I can handle this movie at this moment. But we had decided on it, and we can let the cat out of the bag. We picked movies that were over 3 hours long, and movies that had won 7 to 10 Academy Awards. If you're playing at home on your bingo card, movies that are considered epics. Um,
Mhm.
and this is an end to our Oscar decade cavalcade, but it's such a good movie, but it is not easy to watch. Like, it's not something where you go, I'm gonna schedule a meal and do my annual rewatch of Schindler's List. And
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared. How do I say that? Like, I wasn't prepared to be as emotionally devastated as I was with my hands in my head in my hands, watching scenes that are completely, they're documentary. It's like a Zapruder film of just horrible things that happen to characters and horrible things that happen to real people, and and
Yeah.
it's
It's
it's it's harrowing. It's a harrowing
it,
experience to
I
this
mean,
day.
it really hammers home Spielberg's thing when he said, "I couldn't go back to doing cartoon Nazis in another Indiana Jones movie after making Schindler's List," and he's absolutely right. Um,
But I
you
also think he
can't
had to
go.
do cartoon Nazis before he got there. Like, I
Yeah.
think that's an interesting kind of like it's an interesting like it's this dichotomy of this filmmaker, right? That he wasn't when it was first offered to him in 1983. He's like, I'm not ready, right? And that's part of the production story of this movie. He gets offered the movie in 1983 by Sid Sheinberg, who runs Universal, and he says, Sid, I'm not ready. I come back at me in like 10 years, metaphorically speaking. And he ends up making it in 1993, right?
Hmm.
Development is really interesting. This movie kicked around the idea of this movie kicked around Hollywood for a long time because one of the guys that was like basically one of the Schindler Jewish people basically was kicking the story around Hollywood. It bounced from Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer to Universal, right? It eventually becomes Schindler's Ark, which is Thomas Keneally's novel, in 1982, and then Universal buys the rights. They hold on to it. One of the great stories Hollywood-wise for this movie is that originally the rights were to Scorsese for this movie. Martin Scorsese had the original rights, but Spielberg had a bunch of things kicking around Amblin, and he was able to trade a remake of Cape Fear to Scorsese, and Scorsese traded Schindler's List to Spielberg to do, right?
Hmm.
And also, the only reason the movie gets made is because Spielberg agrees to direct Jurassic Park, which is shocking.
It's
That a
crazy
Hollywood.
that these movies came out like right after each other.
What's crazy that during the 92-day shoot in all over Europe, where he's basically an emotional basket case, at night he's filming during the day and having mental breakdowns during the day, on set with people, just having all kinds of breakdowns, memories, all kinds of things going. His mom, all these different things, and then he goes back to his apartment that he and Kate Capshaw and his kids are there, which is great. She stays with him for the entire 92 days, but at night he's fucking editing Jurassic Park. So like these movies will and they will always be to die together. I will always look at this. Rich, is it not the greatest 1-2 punch a director's ever had? Like just in the same year.
In the same
Right?
year,
Can you think?
I've used the frame. I've used this. I've used the phrase "1-2 punch" for 1973 for Mel Brooks giving us Young Frankenstein or Blazing Saddles and then Young Frankenstein within like a 10 months, 9 months span.
That's a pretty good 1-2 punch. That's
I feel comparing those two films to Jurassic Park and especially Schindler's List.
Well, I'm just being
kind
very
of frivolous. It feels frivolous on a certain level. So I'm loath to do that. But
I don't know that you've ever seen. We've looked at David Lean films. We've looked at various films, right? But nobody's done this in a year.
In a year, okay.
In a year,
I was going to say that's
nobody's had a year where they've made the highest grossing film of the year and the film that wins the most Academy Awards in the same year. Now, sometimes they've done a movie that's done that.
I would think you would actually have to kind of go back and
do real
look at stuff going on in the golden age of Hollywood where directors were just pounding stuff out because they were just, okay, this 8 weeks I'm making
maybe
this
like
movie
a
for
Victor Fleming,
and then after the weekend I'm off to do this this next movie.
Maybe like a Victor Fleming or something like that. Something weird.
Yeah.
Somebody
or
weird.
King Vidor. There's
maybe Billy Wilder. Billy Wilder comes up.
William Wildman.
Ford. Maybe John Ford. I don't know.
Or Van Dyne, excuse me.
But the idea of making two very different movies
in the modern age.
Yeah, I don't think we've had it. We just haven't.
No,
because nobody there's only one other director right now that's working that's like Spielberg, right? And that's Nolan. I give Nolan as much praise as anybody. I don't think he's as good as Spielberg. But his movies are a household name because they're Christopher Nolan movies. A Spider-Man movie moves out of the way of a Christopher Nolan movie, which just also happened this week. It's 2 week. It's 2 week difference. But we don't want Spiderheimer.
Something here really quick. Because Steven Soderbergh, when he gets on a jag, he's usually fairly.
He turns them out pretty quick.
Yeah, that's what I want to.
Possible, but they're not. They're not $300 million box office movies, and then one that makes $250 million and wins 8 Oscars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's a weird thing. But it all started with the development, right? The development of this is weird. Scheinberg buys the rights, after reading the book and says, you have to make this movie. But the whole thing, there's a real interesting thing about it. Poldek Pfefferberg is one of the characters in the movie. So his whole lot in life became, I want this story told in Hollywood. So he actually gets an end credit. He's credited under the name Leopold Page in the credits. And I was looking for it today. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So that's part of the development is this guy kept on telling the story. And then eventually, whatever, the directors that passed on this movie, Rich, it's like a who's who. Roman Polanski, basically, he had survived the Krakow ghetto, which is, I was thinking about this today, Rich, and we'll talk about it later, but I was thinking about this today. Opening of Private Ryan, Krakow ghetto. Opening of Private Ryan or Krakow ghetto. I don't know. I think one gets a lot more hype, but one might actually be better shot, more devastating, completely I think they're both devastating. I don't want to get off on a weird tangent, but I was thinking about that a lot today. There are sequences in this movie where it rivals some of his best work.
Opening of Saving Private Ryan is, it's the big war movie. So you have the big war movie sequence. which we've seen a lot, not done on this technical level before, not done in that immersive way that this movie, that Saving Private Ryan does it. But it's still very, it's still something we're familiar with on a certain level as film watchers.
Yeah, and then
I can't really think of anything that was this devastating as it's like what, 15 minutes or so of the the
bone
the sweep
it's
out of
heroin.
the ghetto.
Yeah, it's heroin.
Yeah, we're seeing, obviously we get the iconic girl in the red jacket thing, but you get the other little kid who keeps running, trying to find a hiding place, and he keeps being turned away. You see people thinking they're safe and they're not. It's something so writ large. I mean, okay, it had like a little hint of maybe we got a little bit of that in like The Diary of Anne Frank, but beyond that,
it just seems bigger.
This point in cinema, we really didn't get something that big about this, and I think that's what makes this the better sequence of the two, because it's new, it's kind of fresh, and it's devastating as hell.
Right, and also I think what's really interesting is because the film takes its time, it goes from being the original Steven Zalian script was 115 pages when he wrote it for Scorsese. Spielberg took him, take a crack and make it 195 pages and come back and we'll lengthen it out a little bit, right? And what you get there is him creating this 10, 15 minutes at the beginning of the movie where you see them, not only do you see all the people that you're going to deal with black market wise, the generals, the SS, the people that are running the black market for the Jewish people. You also get all of the families kicked out of their house, especially one for Schindler, right? He gets a very rich couple that eventually ends up in his factory, but their kicking out of their house is absolutely worse because they go from living with nobody else to living with 25 people. And so it takes all that time, and then it kind of like it settles in, and then it rusts you up again. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what this movie does. It's real interesting that the movie kind of does in every about 35 minutes, right? It's 3 hours and 50 minutes long. Every about 35 minutes, like clockwork, something changes and something goes haywire in a way where you're just like, oh, I wasn't ready for that, or and the script is a really great. It's everybody took cracks at the script, and Zalian was the one who was able to pitch it around, was able to move it around and figure out what they were going through. Spielberg also, in making the movie, said that he really wanted he wanted the extended ghetto liquidation sequence. He wanted that to be real and as much as much reality as possible. I was going to say verisimilitude, but I couldn't get it out. Lots of letters. He felt very strongly that the sequence had to be almost unwatchable, and it is. 22 years later, it is almost, or 32 years later, it is completely, you're looking away, you're checking, I put my phone down away from it because I want to focus. Really interesting stuff. Casting is also, Liam Neeson read early. They had a bunch of people. Actually, I was doing the directors, directors who's who. Scorsese, Polanski, Billy Wilder expressed an interest at some point. Brian De Palma, but he refused it. Didn't feel it was like whatever. Then Spielberg gets the call. If you make Jurassic Park, we'll budget the movie for it. Fantastic, incredible. Neeson gets cast. He up against Warren Beatty, who had read the script. Kevin Costner, and this is the funniest one, Rich. The absolute irony of this fucking idea that Liam Neeson beat out Mel Gibson for the role of Oskar Schindler is got to be the most fucking ironic godsend thing in the history of the world that that somehow we didn't get a Schindler's List with Mel Gibson in it. But Neeson apparently killed in it. That is terrifying.
Frightening as hell.
Yeah, but Neeson, I think, talked to like what the talk about it was that he went to Spielberg and said, I don't think he's necessarily a good person. I think he's got to go through the fire and he's got to come out the other side and still be a terrible person, right? And the movie is dedicated to Steve Ross, who was the Time Warner CEO at the time, and basically Neeson had watched clips of Schindler and watched clips of Steve Ross because Spielberg had said to him, "You need to be this kind of charisma." And watching the early part of the movie, I didn't forget about it, but when you're watching the movie, Rich, right? Like you get hit with the Krakow ghetto scene, you get hit with all the violence, the just abject violence, the loss of humanity, the banality of evil that is coursing through the movie's veins. But that early sequence is like Sting. He's walking in, he's got all the money with him, he's got his perfect suit, his one perfect suit, he's got the money, he knows who to bribe, he knows who he's waiting for. And he is the grifter. He is the chief grifter that's going to be running this enamel thing that he's going to take over because that's his idea, that's his plan. And I was fascinated by contemporarily where we're at in the world, that a grifter can come in and do a bunch of stuff and get away with it and just kind of like throw enough money at something or throw enough girls or throw enough booze or throw enough food, whatever, and be able to entrench himself into something that he wholeheartedly doesn't believe in from the get-go, right? He doesn't. Also, John Williams was approached about doing the score. We talked about movie music. This, of course, is an amazing score. And John Williams literally said to Spielberg at some point, this isn't for me. You need somebody better. At which point Spielberg said, and this is what's great, because we're talking about Bridge on the River Kwai, Lawrence of Arabia, Amadeus, this, right? Spielberg said, yeah, I could get somebody better, but they're all dead, John. I could get, Maurice Jarre or some of the older composers, but they're all dead, John. So I have you. I have you. And you're gonna score the movie. And he's like, okay, Steven. Because Williams, I heard Williams. Well, it's a fantastic score. It sticks with you. It's haunting. It's well done. It's all. Is it Itzhak Stern, who does the violin? So it's basically him. But that, storyline wise, the idea that we almost got a fucking Mel Gibson in the lead role of a movie about the Holocaust is bitterly ironic. Like a black fly in our Chardonnay, I guess. I don't. I read that today and was just fucking floored. They filmed on location. Filming began on March 1st, 1993 in Krakow, Poland. It was a scheduled shoot of 75 days. They were actually near the Plaszow camp. They reconstructed it. They couldn't do it actually on the hallowed crime grounds that are Auschwitz and Plaszow and stuff. So they actually reconstructed a bunch of them in a quarry that was filmed on location in Poland. Another interesting thing about this, Rich, aside from the leads, right? Aside from Embed Davids, Ben Kingsley, Ray Fiennes, and Liam Neeson, an entirely almost German and Polish cast. Right, and Spielberg at one point was thinking about whether or not he wanted to just go subtitles. But an interesting side note about that is he didn't want to have the reading have you look away from the screen and miss something on the screen.
Yeah, I like that the German is is subtitleless. I mean, I'm always an advocate for subtitles over dubbing, but I think here it gives us
you get the point. You know what they're saying.
We're with the Polish people. We know, we understand what the Polish people are speaking, and I think that adds an extra layer of remove from the Germans who are coming in, and it kind of goes, who are these alien invaders in our country? It allows a separation that's from
yes,
us, which I think is very important.
It makes the inhuman people inhuman. Like it,
yeah.
They're like on a different planet. You know what I mean? They're talking to people and they're barking, they're laughing at people, they're shooting guns into corpse piles like they're somebody. I think it really works. Then he makes the decision to make it black and white because, Janis Kaminski and him decide that they're going to film it and it's going to look like you can never tell when it was filmed. And rewatching it, Rich, we've watched a bunch of classic films that were filmed in the 50s, the 60s, the 80s. It has an ethereal quality to it that when you're watching it, you know it was made in the 90s, but you can't necessarily tell at all points where there isn't one or 2 points where you're watching it, Rich, going, hey, that could have been like archival footage. Like that could have been archival, right? That could have been somebody like a 16 millimeter somewhere, right? And then making the choice to make it, the idea that the film is in color until it's not in color right before, Poland gets invaded and the Jews are kicked out of their homes, and then the lights go out, and then that's what the Holocaust is for the Jewish people for 3 hours and 15 minutes of the movie. It's, the idea also, it balloons to 92 days, right? But the interesting thing is he's a basket case and he has to have his family come in. He's having breakdowns on the set. He's reliving things that his mom talked about, his grandmother talked about.
That's perfectly understandable. And if he didn't have this emotional connection to this material, I don't think this film would wound up being as effective. So,
no, I think that's. I do like the idea, though, in reading about production, that his wife and his kids came in because, he said something about Kate Capshaw being like, thank you for keeping me sane for 92 days while there was also editing this other movie. So it comes out, Rich. It opens in, let's see. Hold on. I have the numbers up. Give me a second. It opens December 15th, 1993, just in time for Oscar time, of course. It opens on, let's see. It opens on 25 screens. It eventually gets out to 1,389 screens, which is kind of low for the 90s. It plays an average of 16 weeks per theater. 16 weeks, Rich. It opens to $656 million. Its budget, Rich, is $25 million. It ends up grossing 12.9 times its production budget. So what's interesting here for people who watch the show and for people who pay attention to these things like you and I do, mostly me because I like numbers, but the interesting thing here is 12.9 times production budget is what we talk about with crazy classic movies. This movie came out in the 90s. This isn't something 4 times the production budget is about right for most movies. 12.9 times production budget, that's a little bit more. And that's almost unheard of for movies that come out now, right? So it grosses $96 million at the domestic box office. It grosses $225 million at the international box office for a worldwide box office total in 93 of $322 million. So well over $250 million. Its inflated box office, just the domestic, would be 254. So it'd be at $250 million, which is astounding. The 16 weeks per theater is one of the longest runs of a modern box office hit that we have, because it's not the 80s anymore, and theaters get rid of their movies. It's an astounding piece of business that it made $96 million. It was 3 hours long and only cost $25 million to make, and it looks like $1 billion. It looks astounding. Critical reaction then and now. We always first off, a couple pictures, some nice pictures from the movie. Itzhak Stern and Oskar Schindler, a little Ben Kingsley and Liam Neeson, who are both fantastic in the movie. Ben Kingsley is particularly fantastic. Didn't get nominated for anything, which is kind of shocking. The girl in the little red coat, which comes across in the second half. The amazing Ray Fiennes. Like Ray Fiennes, we're getting towards the end of Ray Fiennes' career. Hopefully, it will go on much longer. But he's in Conclave, which is out now. But here he's young. He's coming off of what's interesting. He's coming off the Lawrence of Arabia movie that was made for television, right? So he's coming off of that, and then he's playing this monster, Amon Goth, puts on 20 pounds for the role, right? Critical response then now, we use Rotten Tomatoes just as a good way to get an aggregate going, so we understand. Rich, it's trending at 98% from critics and 97% from audiences. So it's
what 2% of critics wouldn't recommend this movie? Good Lord.
I would you know what, Rich? I love when you ask. And
okay. Should I show this movie to my 5-year-old? Maybe not. But overall,
the 2%, I was looking hard for the 2%. 2% was hard to find. Here's one of them. I'm not even going to name him, but this is what he said. There's no trust here from the director that the audience might be able to fathom the horrors of the Holocaust if the lines between good and evil aren't distinctly drawn. Real problems with that review. It's like somebody who hasn't watched the movie. I have a real problem with somebody who doesn't understand Spielberg, right? I'm a Spielberg nut. But I don't think he does that here. Like, I think you could look. I'm big into believing that you could accuse Spielberg of being schmaltzy. You could accuse Spielberg of being,
but not in this case.
Overly, goofy or whatever. Like with the end of Saving Private Ryan, with the end of this, you could make all kinds of charges against him. But I don't think he plays around with the morality in this movie. I don't. I think his choices are cold, efficient gunmetal in this movie. Like they're just what's on the page is what's there.
And as I was watching this, yesterday and catching the last bit again this evening, I was thinking about Ray Fiennes' performance as the Nazi commandant, camp commandant, and again, and thinking about Spielberg's, think about cartoon Nazis who are just cartoonishly the bad guys, because Fiennes' character has some shadings to him. Yes, he's a broken person. Yes, he's fucking psychotic and out of his mind. Yes, he looks at fellow human beings who he doesn't care about or doesn't know as not worthy of his attention. We have that scene with Schindler and the maid down in the wine cellar, where we kind of explain that. And I think, some people are like, oh, why are we humanizing a Nazi character? I think it's because ultimately we want to know that humans, anybody, could possibly have the potential for such a great evil. I think, kind of saying Hitler was a monster and separating him from humanity, I think does a disservice to the idea that we need to be ever vigilant and on our guard for
to make sure that this shit doesn't happen.
Who is going to lead the world into a madness that, like we saw during World War II.
Well, and I think he's very shaded. I think there's a moment, like the defining moment of Schindler in the movie is when he finally, well, first off, he's really nice most of the time as long as he's getting paid or he's getting a contract and everything's going fine. I think, the movie makes a very concerted effort for his change to not be a light bulb, kind of like not organic moment, right? It's a series of things that he witnesses that eventually gets to the point where he's like, I'm on the wrong side here. I've made a mistake. And I think the gradual change is much better than a character not earning it, right? And so the idea that there's no chance between light and evil or whatever, for me, I think it's an interesting argument to make. But I also think because Goth is so shaded by Ray Fiennes, like he's a broken person who also, has lost his humanity, but also doesn't give a fuck, doesn't care that he's lost his humanity, doesn't just feels like it'll be the next thing. Even when they're trying to hang him at the end, spoiler alert, he's like, he could care less that he's being hung.
He's a Nazi prison commandant. There's not much to spoil. It's not going to end well for him.
Well, no, but I just think it's like, but he looks so. I was taken aback by how lackadaisical he was, even on the fucking. He's on the getting hung on a chair, and he's just so like, Hail Hitler, like he's just like, Well, and I think
he's a broken piece of shit.
Yes, and he's a terrible person, and he does horrible things. I was telling you beforehand in the green room, the thing I noticed the most today and rewatching the last couple of days, because I split it up just like you did. I think the thing I noticed the most was the sheer volume of people running in the background. Every sequence he's in, because they're afraid that he's going to shoot them or do something horrible, people are just fucking moving ass. They are going so fast in and out of the frames. And it's just like the characters it's really interesting. He has a sequence where he's going to shoot somebody and the gun doesn't work. And there's 3 packs of people that pass behind him as this man is getting ready to be shot. Right? And they just they see what's happening and they're just, I'm not going near it. The Krakow ghetto sequence is mesmerizing and haunting and harrowing, and just little boy gets shut down. Then, there's another sequence of the little boy who when they're trying to put kids on the, fucking trucks to leave, all the kids are hiding around the camp, and the one little boy gets shut out everywhere until he finally jumps into the train. Yeah, jumps into the train, and even there, the kids are like, "This is our hiding spot. Get the fuck out!" And so and then there's the whole sequence, it's kind of been kind of criticized, but I was watching it today. There's a sequence where the women of the camp are sent to Auschwitz accidentally, and they get put into a line, and they've heard stories, and they've muttered but it's been set up so carefully that the women had heard the stories. What happened to a bunch of people? They got put in. They were told they were going to be disinfected. They were given soap. They were put into a shower, and then they were gassed. And so that sequence is so fucking harrowing, where you sit back and you're just like, can this be happening? And it's a different movie from Spielberg's other work, in the sense that it is very documentary style. Like, he's just like the camera that the God camera that's there watching everything that's going on, right? I was entranced by Neeson's performance as first the grifter, and then the person that kind of sees the red coat and I'm on the wrong side. You got to figure it out. And then I was also really impressed with, there's a couple sequences that I don't think we talk about enough, where Neeson is taking chances with all these people's lives, but because he's such a great con man and such a great grifter, he knows he's going to get them through it, but Ben Kingsley doesn't know. And so you're watching the faces.
Mhm.
There's two or three sequences where Ben Kingsley's like looking at him like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're going to get us all killed. Like there's one sequence where they're walking through the plant and he's like, none of our shells are working. And Neeson's like, I don't expect any of our shells to work. And he's like, there's a rumor you've been going around and adjusting the machinery at night. Is that true? And he's like, let's not talk about it. He goes, but I do want to tell you that if a single shell gets produced here that is effective, I'd be upset. And at which point Ben Kingsley stops him and says, if our shells aren't effective, they might send us all to Auschwitz. And he's like, then we'll buy shells, which is the next con man game. Like, he holds on to that energy until the breakdown at the end. The con man energy is strong. Like, there's a sequence where he goes to see the head of Auschwitz to get his women back. And he throws the diamonds on the table. And he's like, I'm not saying it's a bribe, but they're on your table now. You know, and it's just, he's the grifter. And then I find it incredibly appealing that the grifter, you know, when Ben Kingsley gives him the ring and gives him, like, it's this very emotional scene, and Neeson is fantastic. Like, it's,
got him.
Yeah, he's so good in that sequence.
Masterclass.
It's masterclass acting. Like, this pin was worth 2. I could have gotten 2 more people, or this car was worth 3, and you know, and you know, critics of it would say that it's hokey Spielberg, but I would say to you, it's an earned character moment. And you know, Ray Fiennes is great. Everything you've ever heard about Ray Fiennes being fantastic in the movie, great.
The character of Schindler was always looking to get more anyways, more money. What's a good sound business decision? And the fact that he realizes, you know, he kind of, you know, equated the people he was saving as his. And he realized, I could have maybe acquired,
yeah,
I could have saved, I could have helped, you know, so many more. And you know, the phrase from the Torah on the ring about
saving one life,
save one life, you know, you save the world.
It's a phenomenal, it's a masterclass. It's everything around, all the way around, acting, directing, cinematography, score. It's one of those movies, and that's where we go to the legacy. It's very hard to not talk about the legacy. We did critical response. Oh, we just did critical response. We're doing legacy. We're moving on. Legacy of no franchise viability, obviously. But it did lead to the Shoah Foundation, right? Which Spielberg has developed a way for people to tell their stories so that the story never dies, right? The idea that what happened to 6 million Jews in Poland, what happened to, you know, 3 million Catholics, 2 million Gypsies doesn't die. We can't have a moment in our history where we allow it to die. So the Shoah Foundation is something where he's set up where they do video interviews of people, survivors, which is a direct result of this movie. Also the legacy, and this is something for a trying times, right, Rich? This is a movie that, you know, it demands, when you see it and you watch it, you can't believe it's happened. And then you also, in your heart and soul, I would imagine that you have, this is what I feel anyway, I don't care what anybody else says, but what I feel is I don't want it to ever happen again. To anyone.
No, to anyone.
Anywhere,
exactly.
To anyone, anywhere, anytime, where people are looked at where they're not human beings, and they're not, they're just commodities. They're not important. Their lives don't matter. Like, if we get into that place in this world, this movie is I feel it should be required viewing in high school. Like, I feel like you got to get around all the nudity and all the different things that are in it, but the sheer volume of violence, the sheer everything that needs to be seen, it just the legacy of the movie is that it teaches us that there was inhumane people that have walked this earth, and those people should never rise to power again.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about it really long and hard today about watching this movie at this particular point in our history. It hit me in the gut. And I just feel like if more people saw it or if more people watched it, you stay away from the idea that it's 3 hours long. It moves very fast. I would say the editing is very that's another thing I was watching. I was watching the techniques today. There are 3 or 4 edits where it goes from one scene to another flawlessly, like seamlessly, where one person is talking and then the other person is sitting down, and the person sitting down is now Schindler. Right? And it's just these flawless edits where it's seamlessly blended. And it's just one of the most amazing movies. It is part of the oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The one thing I was really struck with the editing this time around was the cutting back and forth between Schindler's the one party, the secret wedding that's going on, and then
Yes.
And then the beating of the maid all at once, where you would actually cut on a piece of an action that was either somebody being happy in the party,
it's
and then
3 different scenes, right?
And then the hitting of the girl all at once, boom, 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 like that.
It's 3 different scenes, and it's usually
amazing.
2. Yes, it's usually 2. I think that's what I was talking about. I think that's where he's sitting at the party, right? And it's the wedding with the bulb being broken, and then Embeth Davidtz, her character being beat to a pulp by Amon Goth, and then it cuts to Schindler sitting at a part. It's flawless material. Like it's the stuff of legend where you just like who comes up with that? You know what I mean? Accolades. So this movie, as part of our Oscar Decade Cavalcade, this movie won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Score, Best Film Editing, Best Cinematography, Best Art Direction. It was nominated for let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It won 7, was nominated for 12. So here are the 5 it lost, Rich. And then you tell me if you know what the answer. I checked these today. So it lost Best Costume Design. Do you know what it lost to?
I'm not going to know who it lost to on any of these. So just let me know. And
so react. Best, that's cool. Best costume design. It lost to The Age of Innocence.
Okay.
Which is pretty fine. It lost Best Sound. It lost to Jurassic Park. It lost Best Makeup. Yes. Well, it's just funny. I forgot how great 93 was, by the way. So it lost The Age of Innocence, Best Sound to Jurassic Park. It lost Best Makeup to Mrs. Doubtfire, which is wild. And then best supporting actor, Ralph Fiennes lost to Tommy Lee Jones. I think that might have been a mistake, but that was a good Tommy Lee Jones performance. Might have been a career thing for The Fugitive. And then best actor, Liam Neeson lost to Tom Hanks in Philadelphia.
Another big important picture.
Yes, but that I was thinking about 93. 93 had In the Name of the Father, Philadelphia. It had a lot of important, really well done movies. So Schindler's List winning Best Picture is pretty impressive. Okay, so Legacy, you should watch it. It's a great movie. It's hard to watch. It's harrowing.
Yeah, it's difficult to watch, but it's required viewing, I think. There
For
are
a lot of
some
reasons.
movies. Yeah, there are some movies I've seen that are really good that I probably will never go back and rewatch. You know, something like Christian Mangiu's movie about abortion called 4 Months, 3 Weeks, and 2 Days. It was a Romanian film from 2007 or 8, somewhere in there.
Mine's Requiem for a Dream.
Fantastic film. I don't know if I want to go back and rewatch it again. It's very harrowing. This, I think, yes, this is also very harrowing, but I think it, holds up under multiple viewings. Maybe you don't want to do it every night for a week. Once every couple of years, maybe.
Yeah, I would say
telling you
yes.
fresh in your heart, if only that.
Well, I would say also every once in a while when you feel you need a reminder that the world is not always a great place. And I think this came at while it was very, I'm not going to lie, it wasn't easy for either one of us. I think it came at a perfect time for us to be able to gird up for things
to remind you to do.
Remind you how important. Yes. It can't happen again. Bad things shouldn't happen more than once.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a fool me once, fool me twice thing. It's something that happened.
Yeah.
But everybody's really great, and the movie is fantastic, and I think it's his masterpiece, but I also think he's got 4 or 5 masterpieces. So that's just a personal opinion. When we say masterpiece for certain directors, usually a director gets 1. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But some people like Hitchcock, Spielberg, John Ford, David Lean, for fuck's sake. We just did David Lean stuff, right? Because both Bridge on the River Kwai and Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago are all pretty amazing films. So we are off next week because we are going to be watching the Oscars and maybe
on Sunday night and
sleeping, and then sleeping on Monday. And maybe doing I might do a quick thing just to talk about or what I felt, but it's it's the wildest, most harrowing year. So good luck on your Oscar pools. Rich, where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
All of my writing can be found at filmbuffonline.com. We also have a Facebook page with where we post little history bits and stuff like that. Like today, 11:30 a.m. Twin Peaks Day. Dale Cooper drove into the town of Twin Peaks for the first time on this date. Stuff like that. Little quick breaking news flashes we'll throw up on there too, as well as notifications when all our big pieces, film reviews, feature pieces, news stories, analysis, stuff like that goes up. I am on socials at Filmbuff Rich on Twitter and Blue Sky. I do 2 other podcasts. One is the Big Picture Podcast I do with my very best friend, Natasha Bogutsky. And our next episode will be dropping next Monday because we always do a post-Oscars show that we record literally seconds after the Oscars end. And then she goes home and I stay up for another 2 hours editing the damn thing. And the other podcast that I do is Film Scribes. I do that as a member of the Philadelphia Film Critics Circle. Our next podcast will be coming out on Wednesday with our Oscar predictions. Myself and a couple of other members of the Film Critics Circle. We take a little bit of a deeper look at some of the other categories that we think don't get enough love, specifically the shorts categories, best animated feature, best for international film, and best feature-length documentary. So maybe give that a listen before you fill out your final Oscar ballot, for your office pool or whatever. Because we think we got some good ideas as to who might win there, but I have to go edit that after we're done here. So. Because I'm the producer on that, so.
Oh, that's amazing.
Make sure ready for Wednesday.
You can find me. You got one other thing? Yeah, what else?
That's all I do.
That's all you do. Just that. Just all those things. You can find me, JW the Movie Guy, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, all those places, all JW the Movie Guy. You can also find me on Tuesday nights on this network doing Loud Nerdy with my good friends Kyle and Jerry. We'll be talking about Twilight Zone tomorrow night, talking about all the different stories that are happening. Thank you for joining us tonight. Remember, the list is life. Remember, be a good human. Don't be a bad human. Be better than what you should be. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks. And Natasha's coming back in 2 weeks. So we'll have Natasha curating some movies for the month of March. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks. Bye.